Here comes a lecturer and a writer on degrowth, the coordinator of Cargonomia, and an interdisciplinary researcher. Please welcome to the stage Vincent Liegey.
Hello, everybody. So it's really a great pleasure to be here today in Istanbul. And I would like, because I am the first opening speaker, to thank the organizers of this conference, the Kadir Has University, to welcome us, to deal with such an important topic, which is about what will happen in our civilization at a particular crossroad, what our allied species is facing. For this particular presentation, I will propose 2 times. First, I would like to make a diagnosis, a picture of where we are as a civilization. And secondly, I will address what is degrowth and what degrowth could bring into the debate to move to somewhere else with hope and enjoyment of life. So I am Vincent Liegey. I am in degrowth for almost 20 years. I live in Budapest, where I coordinate a degrowth cooperative, and we have an organic farm, we have cargo bikes, we have a logistics center, we have educational and research projects. And when I am in Budapest, I have this privileged life where I can live more or less based on the principle of degrowth with a lot of enjoyment of life and a lot of wonderful people. I can live in sustainability and so on. But as the world is going still to another direction, I spent most of my time running a bit everywhere, what I did yesterday to take an airplane to join you here in Istanbul, in this wonderful, growing city, to share my experience and to open these debates. Because I can survive alone very well, but I will be caught back by a society which decided to run quicker and quicker and to self-destruct itself. So I'm also writing books. I am also a coordinator of the International Degrowth Conferences. The next one will be in a few weeks in Pontevedra, in Spain, and next year we will have the next one in Oslo and so on. These degrowth conferences are becoming very large events, welcoming very large diversity of people from all around the world, questioning that. So let's start with a diagnosis. I would like to first show you 2 curves. The first one, let's start down, is about world population on this planet. When I speak about world population, I speak about our allied species, an animal called Homo sapiens sapiens, which started his wonderful journey on this beautiful planet 300,000 years ago. And for a very, very long time, for tens of thousands of years, growth was not existing. Development was not existing. We experienced a lot. We've always been a very intuitive, curious animal based on empathy, solidarity, cooperation. We discovered a lot of places, ways of life. We invented a very large diversity of ways of life, social, economic, imaginary organization, and so on. But as you can see, for thousands of years, the number of people like us didn't really grow on this planet. 10,000 years ago, that's where this curve is starting. Some of us had the great, or not, idea to settle permanently or seasonally. And we started to invent civilization. We started to invent very complex systems, cities, markets, and so on. And also for thousands of years, the world population didn't really increase much. But suddenly, and you will see this type of curve a lot of time, there was more than an exponential increase in our species. And it's connected to the second graph, the one you can see above. It's about energy consumption. In the beginning of Industrial Revolution, we started to understand, to use something we already knew, which is called the fossil energy. And the civilization we are living in now, it's a thermo-industrial civilization. It's more than 80% relying on the combustion of fossil energy. This fossil energy, and I invite you to think about order of magnitude, it's something quite unique. We are in a very unique time of our adventure on this planet, where for 200 years, maybe 300 years, few generations of us will have an access of an incredible amount of energy, which is an accumulation of solar energy, creating decomposition of organic matter for tens and hundreds of millions of years. So on one hand, few centuries, on the other hand, tens, hundreds of millions of years. And we are reaching maybe the limits of this dimension. Because there are limits to fossil energy, it's a limited stock. There are attempts to substitute this dependency, 80% of what we are doing, experiencing every day is relying on this fossil energy. There are attempts to substitute that with something else, but it doesn't really work. We speak a lot about renewable energy. Solar and wind energy is respectively 1% and 2% of primary energy, what we are daily using. Nuclear energy, 4%. The reality, and whatever we do, whatever we develop, it's still an increase of our dependency on this finite stock of fossil energy. And it's not by chance. This fossil energy is marvelous. It's highly concentrated in energy, it's stockable, it's transportable, and you can use it anytime when you want to do marvelous things. But it has some impact, and it's limited, and sooner or later it will end. So you have the fairy tale of green transition, green technologies, green energy, and so on. But behind that, it's also based on extractivism of limited resources. It's about the big mines. It's about new pressure, what we are putting on other material. Just two examples about lithium and cobalt or copper. So we keep on running with the same mindset, trying to go quicker and quicker with exponential finite growth, exponential infinite growth on a finite planet. When this adventure started, the size of the planet, the circumference of the planet was 40,000 kilometers. It's still 40,000 kilometers, even if we dream about growing and growing and growing. Growth is totally connected to the level of energy we put into the system. For decades, we've been hoping that with technological improvement, we will have a type of so-called decoupling. We will keep on going with the same fairy tale in radically reducing the level of energy we put in the system, the level of raw material we put on the system, the level of impact on environmental limits, what we have. There are 9 environmental limits, we already passed 6 out of them. It's very frightening. Decoupling is not happening, hasn't happened, and is unlikely to happen. Unfortunately, all our economic models, all our hopes are based on a bet which is unlikely to win. While going through, we face what we call this great acceleration. I don't go into the details for all these curves, but what is interesting is visually, again, these exponential curves. When will we stop? It's about the collapse of biodiversity. It's about how many McDonald's or maybe smartphones are produced every year. It's about climate change. It's about a lot of indicators, which are some of them totally absurd, to consume more and more useless things what we don't really need, and some of them which are really highly frightening. Because it's not linear systems what we are talking about. It's very highly complex system with a lot of interconnections, which create type of feedback loops, type of tipping points. When we speak about 1.5 degree more in the range on this planet, it's not like every day it will be 1.5 degree more in the same place from the year before. It means that we are maybe transforming radically the basic condition of life on this planet, what we've been enjoying for hundreds of thousands of years. When I say we, I spoke mostly historically about particular people, a minority of people first in Europe, the Western world, and you can see the first map up there. You can see that the shape of the countries, of the continent, it's a bit different. It's the superficie of each country which is modified with the environmental footprint per habitant for each country. And you can see that the global north is quite obese, and the global south countries are very, very, very slim. And it's even more frightening that most of the resources, what we've been enjoying in the Western world and what starts to be enjoyed by new emerging rich people from all around the world, is mostly coming from the same region, Africa, South America, Global South in general. But you have this unfair situation as well, that the countries who are the most responsible for this very challenging environmental situation we have to face are the same one who will be less touched by it. And the one we've been colonized, where resources have been stolen, where people have been exploited, where imaginaries has been also raped, are the one we will face this type of question. So when we speak about degrowth, we should speak about solidarity and also to have this global picture about global solidarity toward the challenges we are about to face. There is depths, environmental, social, ethical depths behind that. But let's move out of this, my part of being an engineer, rational analysis of the things. Let's move more to anthropology or cultural dimension of these challenges. And I have good news. The first one, you don't need GDP growth to be happy. You don't need anymore in rich societies more and more and more GDP growth to improve well-being. And I would even say that you need exactly the contrary. And you can see on that curve how much GDP growth or primary energy you put into the system. Both are connected, related, and Human Development Index. And GDP is an indicator which was created in the United States after the 1929 economic depression. It's an indicator of crisis. When a society started from nothing after a war, after a crisis, after a storm, it makes sense to make growth. It makes sense to rebuild school, hospital, basic infrastructure, grow food for the people and so on. But after you fulfill the basic needs, it doesn't really make sense to always produce more. And it doesn't have much effective impact on well-being. And you reach a tipping point as well there, where it starts to be negative. And we can see that in most of the richest countries, the level of GDP growth, the level of overconsumption, the level of over-destruction of the planet is not related at all to the level of enjoyment of life. It's not working anymore. So we can make step aside and focus on what are our real needs out of the logic of GDP growth and how to fulfill them in a sustainable but even more convivial way. One more positive or good news. More and more all around the world, you have converging surveys showing that the majority of the people understand this challenge and want to get rid of GDP growth paradigm, of this illusion that to be happy, you need to be like the hamster in the wheel, to run always quicker and quicker, to produce more, to work more, to consume more, and so on, which is something which is more and more rejected. Just a few examples. 34 European countries, 61% are in favor of post-growth policies. Another one, which is really interesting. In France, we made a few years ago a citizen convention for climate, where 150 randomly chosen citizens representing the diversity of France had to work and to address climate change and social justice. And they ended up with 150 proposals, which are totally in the lines of degrowth, very radical. This experience has been reproduced in a lot of other territories, countries, regions in the world in the last year. And it turned out that when you make citizens deliberate on this topic, they go much further than what the experts are doing, and they go to degrowth. So people are ready for that, and you have converging surveys in France showing exactly the same. 93% of the French people say that we should step out totally or partially of the myth of infinite growth under two conditions. Let's do it democratic, and let's do it fairly. So, and I'm sorry I have to make a short presentation, sorry to be so quick with so many facts and so on, and maybe a bit superficial. To conclude this first part, the end of global economic growth is first necessary. If not, we will self-destruct the environment, the planet we are living in, is unavoidable. Whether we like it or not, sooner or later, we will reach the end of this fairy tale of economic growth relying on finite resources. But even more interesting, it's desirable. Economic growth is not serving well-being anymore. It's not fulfilling meaningful lives for us anymore. And desired if fairly and democratically implemented. And I put back again this interesting curve because we are also about to reach world population peak. Maybe we are already on it, as we are about energy consumption peak. So we are up there. And the question Degrowth is addressing is, from up there, what do we do? How do we move on? How are we creative to invent new models of society, new economic, social, democratic models to fulfill all our basic needs in a sustainable way, of course, but even more, in enjoying beautiful lives. So it is about what is degrowth. I will go on. I'm very good with the timing. I thought I would be later. I will go with three main definitions of what is degrowth. The first one is a provocative slogan. More than 20 years ago, in France, a group of adbusters, people who were radically criticizing the role of advertisement and marketing in our society. Advertisement and marketing is something highly powerful. More than $1,000 billion invested every year in that, usually mostly by a few corporations. If they invest so much money in it, it means that it should be somehow effective. And people working in this business are usually very creative, very smart. They know how human brain is working. They have a very good knowledge about psychology, social psychology, cognitive science, neuroscience, and so on. And their job is about manipulating our desire, hacking our desire, make us desire things what we don't really need. Why, moreover, creating frustration, creating unhappiness? So this group of adbusters in Lyon, in France, in the early 2000s, went into the old literature of pioneers to degrowth from the 1970s and so on. And they started to realize that there are emerging debates about climate change, about limits to growth. There are emerging debates also about how this model of society based on always more consumerism is not fulfilling well-being and so on. And they started to realize as well that there was the emergence of something which was already spoken about in the 1970s. There was a re-emergence quite strongly of greenwashing. And it started with sustainable development. And as people expert in advertisement, knowing that we live in a society dominated by communication, they had this fantastic intuition to decide to use a provocative slogan. And why provocative? To be protected for any attempt of corruption, of reappropriation from the dominant system. And unfortunately, they were right, because in the last 2 decades, since we launched degrowth into the debate, all the related slogans we've been working with, where most of them were sincerely and seriously constructed by good friends and good people, have been one after the other one co-opted, reappropriated, emptied from its content by the dominant system. So nobody dares so much to speak about sustainable development. I can take an example which is very nice about sharing economy, which was a close movement to degrowth in the 2000s. It was about creating commons out of the market to share a flat, a car, a tool, time, ideas, knowledge, know-hows. It became Uberization of the world. When it was about sharing nice flats in nice touristical places, you end up 20 years later, the district is emptied and you have only Airbnb flats. Very interesting. The last one was maybe sobriété in France, sufficiency. When the President Macron started to use it and started to develop his narrative that sufficiency is wonderful, but it's not about degrowth. It's not about doing less. It's about doing more. So you have all this type of nonsense things, but we are not so far to get a narrative, and we start to see some signs from advertisement business, where they start to sell you more and more things based on the degrowth principle, and sooner or later they will invent a type of degrowth growth or something like that. So we never know. And to do so, we had to attack the heart of this paradigm, the heart of the central belief we are living in, which is growth, which is economic growth. We are living in a society which is around the religion of growth. If you listen to mainstream medias, if you listen to mainstream politicians, whether you are in Hungary, where I live, with Viktor Orban, whether you are in France, where I'm from, with Mr. Macron, whether you are in Turkey with Mr. Erdogan, and so on, these people are unable to think about the world, or unable to make a speech without speaking about economic growth every second sentence, where we never know, we never precise what are we talking about, growth of what, for who, for what kind of purposes, with what kind of environmental, social impacts. So the idea of degrowth, of this provocative slogan, is really an invitation to decolonize our growth or economist imaginary and to start to look at the world not only based on absurd, reductionist, blinding economic indicators, but much more complex qualitative indicators. Why my life is worth living? What is a meaningful life? What is a meaningful activity? What are my basic needs? How do I fulfill it? How do I share? And so on. So degrowth is really about a multidimensional set of thoughts, articulating, as I did in my introduction, the physical limits to growth. It's based on hard science. 20 years after starting with degrowth, unfortunately, we have all the confirmation about that there is no such things as infinite growth on a finite planet. We are playing with the fire. We are really reaching the survival tipping points for our people on this planet, but articulated with the cultural limits to growth. Articulated with first the deconstruction of a lot of what I would call toxic concepts this Western civilization has been built on, from development to capitalism, from consumerism to materialism, from economicism to techno-scientism and so on, from work centrality to how to rethink, how to be creative and create new imaginaries, new values, new principles, how to reconnect with our environment, how to reappropriate free time. The beginning of progress, economic progress and development, it was about reappropriating free time. It seems that it doesn't really work. We've never been as stressed as we are in our Western societies and so on. So it's to explore new concepts like care, like commons, like low-tech, like permaculture, agroecology, open relocalization, solidarity, self-organization, direct democracy, autonomy, conviviality. You have so many wonderful ideas, philosophical concepts, which are now under debate now, but you can also find in our wonderful historic past, the 300,000 of years of Homo sapiens experimenting a lot of wonderful things on this planet. And also, you still have 7,000 languages spoken on this planet. And degrowth started also with radical critiques to development. And only less than 200 languages are living in our imaginary. So we can go to talk to a lot of other civilization, people, and so on, not to do the same. It would be as absurd than to impose them our growth model of society, but to decolonize our imaginary, to make step aside, to start to open our mindset and to think about how it could be a beautiful life. How can I reappropriate tools, activities, invent other type of non-for-profit, exploitative economic models. Degrowth is also a citizen movement, which is connected to different level of action. Individual, with frugal abundance. Collective, there are a lot of wonderful local initiatives all around the world, which are in their daily life. Some of them are even not in degrowth movement, they never heard about degrowth, but they are doing wonderful things in their daily life, who are reinventing, exploring, experimenting other ways to produce, to share, to take decision in a sustainable way, in a fair and convivial way, and in a democratic way. It's about resistance. We have to resist, because even if majorities are emerging in our society toward these new worlds, these new principles, and so on, the dominant system is still in the hand of a minority, which is very powerful and which is pushing us to go further in these suicidal dynamics and so on. And resistance is going through nonviolent civil disobedience action, is going through the organization of conferences, through the publication of books, texts, organization of flash mob, talk to everybody, to reconnect the people in the territories and to make democracy, to reimpose direct democracy, and also to be creative toward how democracy would work and so on. And it's also an intellectual academic movement which is flourishing nowadays with more and more publication, debates, conference, and like the one we have today and so on, but also debates which are going into the dominant system. When the lecture I'm making now, I also did it within large corporation. I did it as a European Parliament. So this debate is happening a bit everywhere. And we have to fight to make it more visible and to make democratic deliberation around this question happen. So degrowth is about international movement, which is trying to cultivate a type of pluriversality. I am from France. We had this big hope that we will bring civilization through colonization to the whole population and so on, which went through the destruction of other cultures and so on. And as we speak about biodiversity for nature, I think biodiversity for cultures is also very highly important. And we have to reconnect with all civilization, with other civilization, open debate. I like when indigenous people are going to Davos and address the big leaders of the world and say that you are destroying everything on this planet. Maybe you should be humble and go to listen to older civilization who've been living in harmony with their own environment for thousands of years. And I think degrowth is really about that. It's about decolonization of the imaginary. It's really about mindset change. Make a step aside and start to really radically, from the roots, question what really matters. And also when you ask the richest people in this world when they're about to die, nobody will tell you among them that the best day of their life was when they entered into the stock exchange, when they made this record of profit, when they bought these companies or whatsoever. All of them will speak about human interaction, the birth of a child, the death of a parent, friendship, convivial time you spend with good people, what are important for you in nature, and so on. So we have to refocus on what really matters. It's about democracy, even more than majorities are on our side. So it's how to rebalance the power structure, the power balance in our society, to reimpose more direct democracy, more deliberative democracy, also to be creative, not only to rely on representative democracy, which is an interesting tool, but which is only a tool, but to invent a lot of other type of ways to make people connect and deliberate together about this key question and to implement other type of governance and so on. It's about sobriety and sharing. It's about creativity, and I mostly speak not to the younger generation. If you deal with ecological anxiety, if you are afraid of what's happening in the world right now, you are right. You are right to be afraid. But it's also a fantastic time of our civilization, of our adventure on this planet, what we are experimenting, where a lot of new openings are happening. We will have to be very highly creative, and we will have the opportunity to explore other ways of life, other ways to invent, organize new economic system, new democratic system, and so on. So degrowth is about social and economic innovation, a bit about technological innovation, like low-tech and so on. But when you deal with low-tech, you realize that the main challenges are really in our mindsets and social, economic, cultural. So to conclude, sorry for this polarized slogan, which is from a book from Paul Ariès already almost 20 years ago, Degrowth of Barbarism. And I think, of course, it will be more complex than that, but it's an opening speech, so I have to be a bit provocative. I think we are at this point. We are a bit at this point where already a lot of degrowth principle or based on degrowth principle things are happening within the society. I think there is somehow a silent transformation of the society which is happening in the mindset of the people. I show you a few figures about that. In the behavior of the people, there are also converging surveys and which are totally full of contradiction. Like on one hand, you have big buzz around fast fashion, but on the other hand, not neglectable part of our societies are reusing, sharing, repairing, recycling, and so on, are inventing new ways of life, are slowing down, are looking for balance, and so on. In Global South countries, there are a lot of fantastic initiatives, knowledge, know-hows, mindset towards that, and so on. And even if you have this majority emerging, the dominant system is still dominated by a minority, which is highly powerful. They control institutions, they control the corporation, which are no stronger than most of the states. They control large part of the medias. More recently, they started to control something which plays a very central and maybe toxic role in our democracy, the social networks through their algorithm. Spoke about polarization of our societies and so on. And we are a bit in between. And the main goal for Degrowth and all our friends and related movements and so on, it's how to create another type of power balance to reimpose democracy, to reconnect the people, to reimpose the right questions in the public debates, which are not the one what we are imposed to, which are creating more fears and more polarization. So degrowth is about democracy, and while doing so, it's also about rebuild hope and enjoyment of life. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Liegey. We have a few minutes to have some questions for Mr. Liegey. It would be great if you could raise your hand so we can get you the microphone.
Ben sizi gösterdim.
Hello, welcome Turkey. Thank you. Sunum neydi? Presentation. Thank you. Türkçe söyleyeyim, çevireyim. Evet. Özür dilerim İngilizcem için, hani kelimelerin eksik olduğu için Türkçe söylemek istiyorum. Kendi dilimde konuşacağım. Öncelikle sunumdan çok şey öğrendik ama en son bu Degrowth or barbarizm'de, hani barbarizm belki sizin dilinizde daha farklı kullanılıyor olabilir ama Türkiye'deki hani barbarizm kavramı açısından hani biz anarşizmi kullanıyoruz. Anarşizmde hani işte Gezi direnişini, işte bir 11. senesi zaten. İşte Gezi direnişini selamlıyorum, bütün tutsakları da burada. Bu 11. senede orada bir anarşizm yaşandı, doğru. Ama Türkiye'de mesela barbarizm olarak karşı hükümet tarafından da bize barbarlık şeklinde ve bir kültürel bir söz olarak barbarizm Türkiye'de, yani Türkiye kültüründe ya da bilmiyorum hani Türkiye kültüründe ve özellikle muhafazakar kültürde işte Osmanlı'dan gelen hani Avrupa normal işte Osmanlı'nın da işte Avrupa'nın da barbarlar şeklinde gelen bir tavrı da var kültür olarak. Barbarizm kelimesinin ben burada ne yazık ki çok üzgünüm yanlış kullanıldığını düşünüyorum. Şey olarak da hani hem Türkiye'deki kültürel açıdan hem de bizim eski Türk kültürü açısından da bu eleştirimi kabul etmenizi rica edeceğim. Ya da kabul etmeseniz de dinlemenizi rica edeceğim. Anarşizm, okey. Yani belli bir şekilde dünyayı ya da kapitalizmi, emperyalizmi, kültürel farklılığı değiştirmek istemek için anarşizm gereklidir. Şey için anarşizm, evet, anarşizm kelimesinin daha mantıklı olduğunu düşünüyorum. Ve ekolojist olarak kendim de anarşistim. Evet, anarşistim ama bu şey değil. Hani insana ya da bir şeye pozitif ayrımcılık değil, hayır. Gerekirse anarşistiz ama bu zarar vermek şeklinde değil. Anarşizmin belli bir standardı var. Onun da bir kendine göre bir kurulu var. Barbarizme hayır. Teşekkürler. Yanlış anlamadım. Kelime yanlış.
Yeah, no, it's very funny because it's about reversing the weight of the word. I mean, barbarism, it was And you find that in Critics to Development, how the Westerners were looking at other civilization, people, and so on. And now it's to reverse the thing, that barbarism is in the side of the so-called progress and development, which with arrogance, what you can find in it is thinking that we are the right civilization, but this is the one which is bringing self-destruction and high violence within the society. And about anarchism, there are strong connections in terms of principles and philosophical background between degrowth and anarchism, which is also something which has been demonized, but quite interesting. And you may find among the pioneers to degrowth a lot of very interesting anarchist groups. I think about the Naturians, for example, in France. In the early last century, we were fighting against industrial revolution and technological progress, saying that it's only, it's supposed to liberate the people, but at the end, it's only alienating even more the people. So you have all this background, and the next special issue for the Degrowth Journal, where there is a call for paper, will be about degrowth and anarchism, what we have in common, not in common, and how both could feel each other. So thank you for your comment.
We can have one more question. We don't have so much time.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. So my question is, I do agree that degrowth is necessary for a more brighter, regenerative future, but like whenever I talk to people about this concept in general, there's always this belief that it's really possible to grow past that religion of growth. And I think a lot of people are kind of trapped in that paradigm of like capitalist realism, and it's hard for a lot of people to just even start to imagine a road past that. So my question is like, how do you believe that the paradigm and that way of thinking might change or might be changed for the masses?
Yeah, it's a very good question and very fundamental point. There is that famous sentence, I don't know who was the first who said it, that it's much easier to imagine the collapse of our civilization than moving out of capitalism. And there we need to open debates, we need new narratives. If you look at, we have an animal of narratives. And if you look at cinema production, for example, you may find an incredible amount of wonderful series, movies, speaking about the collapse of our civilization. And you may find nothing about degrowth or about the democratic moving out of capitalism and so on. So we need to work on that. We need to develop new narratives because we need to say to the people that it's possible, it has already, and it can happen. But yeah, it's one of the key challenges for degrowth, yeah.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our session. We have another 15-minute break before the session with Ernst on donut economics. And in Cinema Room A, we will have a panel on degrowth in which Vincent Liegey will be a panelist. Thank you.